Good morning. You listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Kermit Baker, a Harvard economist who focuses on two areas. With the American Institute of Architecture, you're their chief economist, and you also study economic activity related to housing. Let's start with the architectural role that you serve. Let's look at the billing index, which just came out yesterday, and it's back up over 50, right?
Yeah, it is, Kemp. And just to remind our listeners, this is an index of revenue, basically design billings at architecture firms, and it's a nice leading indicator of construction activity, and the index is centered around 50, so any score above 50 suggests that design activity at architecture firms nationally is growing, and that suggests that we're going to see an increase in construction activity sort of 9 to 12 months later. And as you said, the February number was back above 50. We had just a tweak below in January, 49.6, but conversely, just a tweak above in February, 50.3 nationally. So kind of hovering around this low growth line, and I think that's probably the takeaway from this. We haven't seen a number in our index above 52.5 since the middle of last year. So, the numbers are coming in sort of consistently showing a bit slower growth in design activity over the last 6-9 months. And I'm guessing that's what we can expect to see moving forward. No decline, no consistent declines, but probably slower growth moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I looked at the Wall Street Journal this morning, and it was talking about the real estate market and how, on a year-over-year basis, it's down considerably. Does that give you a moment to pause and think that things might be turning down a little bit?
Well, I saw that article too, Kemp. Commercial real estate sales have been slowing, and they talked about banks requiring higher interest rates on these purchases and generally more down payments. So, I think the takeaway from that article was that we're on the downside of the cycle for commercial real estate. I think we're on the downside of the cycle for commercial design activity, maybe even the downside of the cycle in terms of construction activity. That's been very strong for the last year and a half, but we're likely to see slower growth moving forward. So I think not too many surprises. We've been in a fairly strong market for the last few years. The economy's growing a little more slowly. We're seeing some concerns internationally in terms of economic growth. So, probably would expect to see some slower growth on the commercial construction side, the commercial real estate side, the commercial design side as a result of that.
I was just with a group of commercial flooring contractors last week, and their business is actually doing very well. And as you indicated, what you talk about with a billing index is way out front. So they're still enjoying somewhat of what I'd call the peak of where things have ended up.
They're on the tail end of the construction cycle, so that makes sense, and they should be seeing good numbers, and they should be enjoying them, but I think probably paying heed to the fact that some of the leading indicators suggest that they may be seeing somewhat slower activity moving through the end of 2016 and into 2017.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kermit, so do you think this dip is a little blip, or are we on the way down for a prolonged period? Any idea?
We're seeing, Kemp, really pretty mild cycles coming out of this last very serious one. We didn't see a lot of upside growth. We're not overextended now, so I think we're going to see slower growth for the foreseeable future. I don't see this as a 3 or 6 month blip, and then we're going to start accelerating again. By the same token, I don't see why this period of slower growth shouldn't continue for at least another couple years or so. There's nothing I'm seeing that really points to serious prospects of a national economic recession in the indicators at present, at least. So, I think we can all enjoy a period of stable but slower growth over the next couple of years.
All right, well, let's move to the housing market. You do publish, as your role with the Joint Center of Housing Studies, you publish this leading indicator for remodel activity. I took a look at that a couple of weeks ago, and it looked like you were calling for a rather robust number for spending on remodeling and housing, up from around 2% up to 6% growth. And tell me if you're still thinking that might happen.
We are seeing a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, the one piece of the construction sector that still has more growth ahead of it is single-family owner-occupied homes, and that market usually correlates pretty well with home improvement activity. People buy new homes and things move around, and people that are buying existing homes fix those up. So those are often connected. Over the last 3 years, in terms of home improvement activity, we've seen an average of about 4% growth, and that's probably the trend that we've seen in this industry over the last 20, 30 years, about 4% growth on average. A bit of a weak spot last year, reflecting some problems we saw in the broader housing market, getting financing out, some of the labor issues they were seeing. And it looks like we're working through that, and as you said, kind of moving up modestly, a little bit of acceleration, the upper side of mid-single-digit growth, having been on the lower side of mid-single-digit growth for about a year or so now. So I think moving, again, in a healthy direction, a little bit of increase. I don't expect we're going to see double-digit increases in home improvement spending this cycle at all, but the numbers are looking pretty solid. We talked to remodeling contractors, and they're seeing bigger projects show up. They're seeing modeled room additions, some of the projects that households don't undertake when they're nervous about the economy or nervous about their own economic circumstances. So I think it's encouraging that they're doing more than just what they need to do, which would be kind of replacing the roof or replacing an HVAC system if that fails, and now doing more of what we call discretionary projects, things that they enjoy doing and do when conditions are looking a little more favorable.
Yes, let's just look at some core factors in this. I mean, unemployment is at a low rate. Seems like wages are up just a bit. Oil, cost to put fuel in your car. Home equity is up. All these things would lend us to think that there might continue to be growth in the housing market.
Well, we're seeing a balancing. Kemp, you talked about sort of broader economic strength. I think closer to home improvement and even new residential construction is some continued healthy rebound in house prices. Prices are almost back to where they were before the downturn. That may even sound a little bit scary, but generally they've been contained except in a few markets. And I was just looking through numbers that Federal Reserve Board puts out, and the average homeowner has as much equity in their home today as they did at the peak of the market. So they've come all the way back in terms of recapturing that equity. A lot of that is the increase in house prices, but a lot of that is also households behaving more conservatively, more fiscally conservative, and paying down debt and taking on less new debt and things like that. So, I think they're in a good position. Certainly, home equity is a key factor in driving home improvement projects because a number of those projects are financed through home equity lines of credit and things like that. So, households are feeling better about the housing market. I think they're feeling better that house prices are stable, that they're not going to be dipping again, and therefore they're willing to reinvest in their homes. I think that's a good sign for everyone in this industry.
All right, Kermit. Well, I appreciate your read on what's going on in a market that definitely impacts the flooring business. Again, been talking to Kermit Baker, a Harvard economist and the chief economist with the AIA, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.